Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's JP, and we're back here on the session. A lovely, rainy Monday evening, and I hope you guys are out there staying dry in podcast land. Although, if you're listening to this in the summertime, I just sound like a complete idiot, which is, different than usual, I guess. On today's show, we have Brian from Bravery Brewing down in Lancaster, California, the Antelope Valley, once again rearing its head and coming back on the show. Brian, welcome to the session.
Thanks for having me. Super excited to be here.
Awesome. Yeah, we just had transplants on last week.
Yeah, I just watched that video earlier this morning, actually.
Cool.
Yeah.
It was a good time. I was like, oh, wow, we're having a little, and all we need is Lucky Luke now.
Yeah, do the trifecta.
We'll complete everybody. But anyway, I really appreciate it. And before we get into, to you and all the kind of fun stuff that we do, I do want to harass you a little bit because normally we get people who send like, oh, well, you know what I think I'm going to do is send 8 hazy IPAs and then like canned water. And then that would be a good representation of, but you sent 4 bourbon barrel-aged beers.
I have no shame.
You really don't. And, and that's cool. I respect that. It's a lot. I was opening the box and you were very generous with the beer. So again, thank you very much. And I don't mean to make too much light of it because I know these beers are expensive, especially with the wax and everything like that. And the lineup looks great, but I'm opening the box and I go, oh, okay, wax dip. So automatically I'm sort of conditioned to be like, okay, this is going to be a barrel-aged beer. This is what it is, right?
Yep.
Pull it out. Okay, cool. So this is a vanilla bourbon beer. Okay, great. Pull another one. Oh, it's the same. Do they send 2 of the same? Nope, that's different. Okay, and then just going through and the reality set in of what tonight's going to be about. So I'm glad it's happening here with me and not in the studio because I think it would be a big giant mess. However, when we do have in-person sessions again, I think you should come up because I think you're going to give everybody just a great night. If you keep bringing beers like that. Yeah, for sure. Actually, it's supposed to be happening in January. We're going to be transitioning back to in-person shows. I'm still going to be here, but Justin will be running shows from the studio, and we can get a bunch of beers on, and it'll be a little bit more like it used to be. But such is life, man. We had to do it for the pandemic, and I don't know. Here we are. But yeah, that'll be cool, man. We'll try to get you back in there. So anyway, Brian, after all that, tell me a little about yourself, man. What's your brewing journey like? Were you homebrewing before you got involved in getting a paycheck?
Yeah. And, actually, I was thinking about that because I knew it was going to probably come up. So much of my journey deals with the brewing network and with the More Beer homebrew shop. I was going to college out at UC Riverside. So I was just a few blocks away from the More Beer store out there and heard about it because they were doing brew tutorials, I think like every Saturday or every other Saturday. Mm-hmm. And as kind of like a poor college student, the word was like, oh, just go and pretend to be interested in the brew tutorial. And then you can drink the free beer from the last session. Yeah. So sorry, Rob over there.
Dude, that rules. Pretend to be interested, but that's a lot of work to put in for free beer. Maybe it's not. I don't know.
Well, I mean, fortunately for me, moments into standing there, it was very interesting. It's so engulfing, like the aroma of the brew day, just everyone hanging out. There's so much camaraderie for some reason, just standing around a pot of boiling wort. So that really caught my attention. And then shortly after, I was getting my first, 5-gallon brew in a bucket kind of set up for More Beer. Mm-hmm. And then very quickly after that, I graduated to a 20-gallon tippy dump system.
Geez, you went right in.
Yeah. So like about a year in, I was brewing 20 to 40 gallons of wort every weekend, which was definitely past the legal threshold for one household.
Well, if you're on the Roman calendar, maybe you have your own calendar and your years are different.
Yeah.
True.
So I went to school for film studies and was fortunate enough to be a production assistant right out the gate on some TV shows for a few years.
Oh, nice.
But every weekend I would come back and homebrew. I didn't have a garage where I was living in Orange County, so I would drive back here to the Antelope Valley to brew in my parents' garage. And kind of passions flip-flopped. I realized how intense, the film and television industry is. It's very dog eat dog. I think you have to have a very aggressive personality to survive and do well in that industry. Which,
Yeah.
kudos to everyone that's thriving in that industry. I have all the respect in the world for those people.
Yeah. Or even just paying bills.
Yeah.
That's tough. And actually, you're the second person to come on and talk about their stint, in and around Hollywood. We had the boys from Paperback
Oh yeah.
brewing on in LA, and the owners were like, on the ad side of things, it's like, it's too much. Like, it's just a lot, and it wasn't enjoyable anymore. And then I brought up the parallel of like the Swimming with Sharks movie from the 90s. I feel like, from what little I know about it, it's very much like that. It will destroy you, and you will destroy other people, and you'll feel good about it because you're furthering your career.
Yeah. Yeah. You have to be completely obsessed with doing what you're doing and not having much of a life outside of it. Which again, that works for a lot of people, but fortunately for me, I was able to recognize that early on in my like early to mid 20s. And then, like I said, I was living in Orange County, so I was frequenting the brewery and bootleggers pretty often.
Okay.
And ended up weaseling my way in as a volunteer at bootleggers. And then after a little while, they took me on as an employee. And that was really cool. I worked there for about a year, and they were still relatively young. I think they were on a 7-barrel brew house. So anyone that was in there was kind of doing a little bit of everything. Mm-hmm. So I got to help brew. I helped with cellar duties, deliveries, bartending. And something clicked that's like, hey, I love home brewing so much. I love this job, even on its worst days, which, working in a brewery, there's a lot of bad days. But I still walked in there every morning with a smile on my face. So it's like, I think this is what I want to transition into. And shortly after that, I was 24 going on 25. And my dad, who has a business degree, helped me put a business plan together. And at the time, there were no breweries yet in the Antelope Valley. And we found a location that worked and went for it. And we opened our doors in 2012.
Oh, wow. Nice.
Yeah.
Very cool. That's very cool. How was that transition, moving from the film industry? Like you said, it's very competitive and it's very in demand. There's always somebody ready to put their foot in the door to replace you or whatever. I would think there's, a little bit of hesitancy of like, am I doing the right thing? Especially, in beer, there's a lot of that too. There's a lot of competition on the shelf. There's a lot of competition for guts, right? You want your beer going in, customers, right? How was that? Was it hard to do? Was it hard to move from this fast-paced film world to a very, labor-intensive beer world?
I mean, fortunately for me, doing like 70-hour work weeks on the TV sets conditioned me to be able to, work 12 hours in the brewery every day. Okay.
Yeah, well, look, you can only get so much coffee for people. Yeah.
But I think, if we were to try to open the brewery today, it would be a completely different story. What you're talking about, the competition on the shelves and just how flooded the market is, which is great for the consumer, but really hard for the startup brewery. Us opening nearly 10 years ago, especially out here, I always kind of refer to us as like this LA County tide pool. There were no other breweries. Kinetic, which I'm sure you're familiar with.
Yep.
They beat us to market by about 5 months, but we were significant overlapping of like planning time. Mm-hmm. And I actually bartended there when they first opened.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. Worked there until we were able to get our license to brew here, which I was very transparent about that. They knew that I was opening up a brewery soon. But anyways, yeah, I think we were fortunate. We were kind of shielded up here. There wasn't the same kind of competition as there is, in the Bay Area or San Diego or now LA. And so we got to make a lot of mistakes and figure things out in real time. And we had a very trusting community that, was like, hey, we're just happy to have 2 breweries here, and we're gonna make sure you guys are taken care of. Yeah. I tip my hat to anybody that's opening a brewery right now or just recently opened a brewery, because it is completely different now.
Yeah, I mean, I'm assuming you're talking even just, you know, pandemic aside,
Mm-hmm.
you know, because there's a ton of people out there. But what would be the most difficult thing in your mind, pretending the pandemic wasn't even around, about opening a brewery, even where you are right now?
So again, I love this industry because I get to be nice most of the time, where, like I said, in the film industry, being nice is a luxury. Uh, so it would be really hard to go into a bar that already is stacked with, 10 craft beer handles. And then now if you want to get your beer in there, you're having someone get removed, where it's a lot easier when I'm walking in and I see Bud Miller Coors tap handles. I'm like, oh, I have no problem with those going away.
Right.
Let's bring in some local craft. But
Yeah.
it would really hurt to walk in and know that if I go in there, it's at someone else's loss.
Okay, that's why you didn't make it in film and TV, because you're nice. You have a feeling.
Yeah, which is a handicap in that industry.
Yeah, but I mean, also, is it sort of just? I feel like it's almost expected in the beer world of like, well, that person's going to go away, knowing that this is potentially like a rotating tap handle, and I'm going to go away in 6 months anyways, or something like that. Does that factor into it at all, or is it really just like, oh, that sucks because I know these people, this beer is good, but mine, is better or whatever, and so that's just the way it goes. Like, can you afford to be that emotional about it?
No, for sure. And I think I'm exaggerating a little bit just to kind of make the point, but
Okay.
yeah, I mean, there's definitely a survival of the fittest, which is fine. Cause if I ever lose a tap handle, it's like, okay, well, what happened? Was it like you were saying, it's just rotation nation that was going to happen eventually, or was it customer service, or did they have, what I always like try to do is the right beer for the right place kind of a thing. It's like, did they take one of our imperial stouts when they should have had a pale ale?
Are you talking about me specifically?
No, you get nothing but barrel aged beer from me.
Do you ever ask the venue, the bar or wherever, that they took you off or they didn't order, like, hey, what happened? Was it, just what you said, basically?
Yeah, we try. And it's either a miscommunication or because we put a lot of effort into our delivery system, and if they call us on a Friday and like, oh shoot, we're so sorry, we should have ordered more kegs from you guys when you delivered earlier this week, we'll drive out there that same day. Which is the leg up that we have over bigger distributors, being a small self-distributed brewery.
So it's not always just like they want to change or whatever. Sometimes it is just an error.
Yeah, I think a lot of it, miscommunication, or like I said, the wrong style for the venue.
Okay. That's interesting, because I would never think to do a follow-up. But it is sort of like sales, right? Where it's not like, it's not, in your face and you're sending spam emails or like you're going door to door or whatever. But there is, I think, sort of key points in a position like you're doing, B2B sales or whatever, to do some follow-up, to take something from the marketing industry and kind of plug it into the beer world and check up with your clients and be like, hey, tell me what happened. Maybe we can fix it if you're noticing something that I'm not noticing.
Yeah, especially if we're talking about accounts that are much closer to us here in the AV. I mean, we do have our beer outside of here, but these are people that I'm going to see on a weekly basis because they're other members of my community. And there are close to 500,000 people living in the Antelope Valley, but it still is a very, very small town vibe. Mm-hmm. And so you can't just turn your back on someone knowing that, oh, I'll schlep my beer elsewhere. It's like, well, there's only so many places that you can do beer schlepping. So
right.
Make sure you don't burn any bridges.
How was the city of Lancaster in opening up? I mean, you were the first brewery to really start getting going out there. Like you said, there were some timing issues that lined up with Kinetic, and I know talking to Steve, that the city was very open to mm-hmm. having Kinetic in, and they really basically sort of bullied him into opening that place. How were they with you as far as permitting and that kind of stuff? Generally, a first brewery isn't going to really have a whole lot of welcome wagon kind of things. There's going to be a lot of internally stuff with the city going on about, can we do this, and permitting issues to figure out. Did you run into any of that?
Big picture, it was pretty smooth. There was only a couple of things worth bringing up. The one is that the Lancaster Boulevard, where Kinetic was, is kind of the jewel of the city from the city's perspective.
Yeah.
It's fine. I spent a lot of time there. But they really wanted us to open there, but we're a production brewery. And so it's like, guys, we can't spend that square footage. We need a 5,000 square foot facility minimum. And A, that isn't on the boulevard. And B, if it was, we'd be paying 6 times, 8 times per square foot than what we're doing here. Because we're just that kind of traditional warehouse, open space brewery concept. So that was a little bit of friction initially, but then the other one that was kind of funny is it really blew their mind when we were telling them that we wanted to be open to all ages, because they didn't really know what a production brewery was. So they were like, no, but you guys are a bar. If you don't have food, which initially we didn't, then you're a bar. And they wanted us to have a bouncer, giving out wristbands, and no kids allowed.
Huh.
And
that's very old school.
Yeah. So we had to put together a list of like 75 California breweries that were doing what we're doing just 75. To show them.
Yeah. Not 10 or 30.
It was
75. That feels like overkill just on purpose, just to make a point.
Yeah, there's a little bit of that too. But, so a lot of education, when you're the first to do something in an area, which Kinetic beat us, but they were a brew pub. So the first production brewery out here, they didn't really know how to deal with us initially.
Interesting. Okay. When did you add food?
That was in response to COVID.
Oh, wow. Okay. So you went, 8 years or so without
we
having food?
Never ever wanted to get into. I love food. I spend a lot of my free time cooking.
I love food. I eat it 3 times a day.
Yeah. I die without it.
That really would complete me.
Yeah. I mean, as you know, I think LA County was the most strict in the entire country, probably, as far as the shutdowns and the duration of them. And I know you were talking with Matt and Sarah a little bit about it, but yeah, I mean, there was months on end with us being forced to basically be a liquor store and just sell beer to go. And about 3 months into it, it was just kind of like, I don't see where this is ever going to end. And if we're at the whim of having to have a food truck here, which again, like I said, being a tide pool off of LA, there aren't a whole lot of food trucks up here. And then there's reliability issues. So if that truck, if they don't show up on a Friday night, legally, I'm not allowed to sell beer. And so that's why we moved the kitchen. But that ended up being over $100,000 project, and it took about 4 months to knock out. Our former office, which is about 600 square feet, we just gutted that and ran all the sewage and the plumbing and everything. And we have basically like a from scratch pizzeria now in the brewery.
Wow. And that's your kitchen is a little pizza corner.
Yeah.
That's cool, man. I mean, honestly, 4 months doesn't sound, I'm avoiding the $100,000 price tag because that's a lot of money, but it doesn't sound like a bad timeline. All things considered. I mean, it seems pretty decent because you're doing it at the beginning of the pandemic when I'm sure, the city is probably going, I don't know what the fuck to do. That seems kind of fast. Yeah.
Fortunately, because, you're getting approval from the city, from the county, and some from the state. It's like, hey, we're making this decision because of the situation that you guys are kind of putting us in. So we're going to do everything right, but please make sure everything's expedited, because every day that we're waiting to get this open is a day that we're, hemorrhaging money. Yeah. So yeah, I think outside of COVID, that project would have taken probably closer to a year, maybe. But since everyone was on our side trying to get everything rushed, I mean, we were doing some of the inspections like through Zoom, which it was crazy. Like showing them some of the plumbing on the wall or something, because they weren't able to make it out to visit in person.
That's weird and very, alternate reality. But that's also very cool at the same time. That is very accommodating. I don't know. First of all, I've never heard of that. Let's do a building inspection over Zoom.
Right. Yeah.
That is like really nice. I mean, I know you said you're putting pressure on it, but that's really kudos to them for sort of understanding that they're going to have to make concessions as well in order for reality to sort of keep moving forward.
Correct.
That's kind of cool.
Yeah.
I mean, I was really waiting for you to be like, no one came out for like 4 weeks and they had to go down. Like, I know even Bev's having issues with, dealing with like planning Springfest right now. It's like no one's talking to her. And she's like, I don't know what to do. I don't know. Anyway, I think that's cool, man. So you got open. Pizza. Are you a big pizza head? You got like making pizza at home or whatever? Why pizza?
I really like baking bread, and I only did a little bit of pizza making at home, but kind of like at the top of the pandemic when everyone started making sourdough, I started making pizza.
That's true.
And yeah, so about 3 months into that, it was like, we need to have a food option of our own. What's high margin, but also we could do artisanal, and it goes great with beer, and pizza is pretty much always at the top of that list.
Yeah, and you can artisanal pizza just means it's burnt on the top a little bit. That's what I think. I'm just kidding. I don't know.
No, it's 48-hour fermented dough and sauce from scratch, everything from scratch. We have a deli slicer, so we're like slicing our own prosciutto to put on the pizza and stuff like that.
There you go. Attaboy. Yeah, I'm definitely just teasing. You gotta pizza it's not hard, but it's like making beer.
Totally.
Or you can do it really fast and it's a beer. But if you do it, the right way and take your time and with the dough and whatever, then it's elevated a lot more. So definitely a lot of respect for doing pizza the right way, because it is very easy just to rush out. Oh, here's a fucking pizza, whatever. But you would do a 2-day like cold ferment on the dough. Wow, sounds delicious.
Yeah, next time you're in the area, you gotta come check it out.
Yeah, man, that'd be cool. All right, so pandemic sounds like it forced your hand, you blew a bunch of money on a pizza kitchen, but turns out to be a really great idea.
Yeah, big picture, it's something we would have never done without our hand being forced, but it's going to probably be one of the best business decisions we've made in a while.
Wow. Yeah. Okay. Very cool. Well, I'm looking at these beers and I feel like we should try one a little bit early. And then we keep talking and whatever, but we got a lot of big beer to get through today, Brian. So what should I do? I mean, okay, so here, let's go through. So we have the Shroud. We have 2 bottles of the Shroud. Tell me a little bit about that project and what that is, and help me guide me through what I got. I got 2 of the Shroud. I have the Lost Diner, and I have Moving to the Country.
Yeah, so the Shroud, the blue wax bottle, I would save that for last, because that's a very peaty Islay Scotch barrel. And probably Moving to the Country would be a good first one, because the base is a wheat wine.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
Were you doing a lot of these big beers when you were homebrewing?
Not so much when I was homebrewing, but that is the style of beer that really caught my attention when I was getting into homebrewing in the first place. The Eclipse series 50/50 and Old Viscosity, and the Black Tuesday, of course, when I was living in Orange County. So yeah, just the big, dumb, over the top beers that I know a lot of people will do a bottle on their own, but you should probably always share these beers.
Yeah, for your health.
Yeah.
Okay, interesting. When you opened, were you doing these right out of the gate, or did it take a little bit to sort of work your customer base up to acknowledging these?
So when we started, we were on a 3-barrel brew house. We're on a 15 now, but there just wasn't a whole lot of beer to throw into barrels at the first place.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So about a year into being open, we started barrel aging for the first time, and we've been very consistently barrel aging for the last 8 years now.
Okay.
And the beer you're drinking right now, for a while, every 100th batch of beer, we would do some kind of barley wine or take on a barley wine. And so about 3 or 4 years ago, we started making that beer. And our head brewer at the time, he's no longer with us. He opened up his own spot in Virginia called Decipher, which I'm very proud of him.
Okay. Who was that? What's his name? Is that Roger?
No, that's not Roger. Roger, I believe, is in Pittsburgh now. His name is Brad Burton, and he did work with Roger. There was some overlap between the two of them. But yeah, he had the idea of putting the peaches into the wheat wine, which I thought worked really well. So then we barrel age it for a year in bourbon barrels, pull it out, dose it with more peaches, and then cinnamon and whole nutmeg.
Cinnamon and whole nutmeg. Okay, excellent. I'm gonna let it warm up a little bit because it is pretty cold. But it's 13.26 ABV. I appreciate the specificity on that.
Yeah, so on our Bravura lineup, which is our annual beer club, we send all the barrel aged beers get sent out to get alcohol testing, and so White Labs is nice enough to give us the 2 decimal points, so I throw them on the label.
You paid for it, brother. You might as well use all the information.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's for sure. Well, it smells great. So define a wheat wine for me. And I know what it is sort of, but for people who might not know, of course. How do you differentiate a wheat wine, from like a barley wine or something like that?
Yeah, it's interesting. With educating like our tasting room staff, for instance, I always try to talk about how saturation of something will change the way it's perceived. Like, diacetyl, for instance, at a low ppm, it's kind of artificial butter, but then higher ppm, it turns into butterscotch. Wheat is an interesting ingredient where in a lower ABV beer, like a Hefeweizen or just a wheat ale, it gives that pillowy, fluffy mouthfeel. But for me, in my opinion, when you get past 8, 9, 10% on a wheat beer, it takes on kind of a vinous character. And it's no longer that fluffy character. It is like a silky, vinous mouthfeel, which I think you can get a little bit from rye, but you definitely are missing that with 100% barley beers. So then that kind of vinous take on the beer, in my opinion, holds spices in a different way than an all barley beer will. And if it's better or not, I'm not really sure, but it's definitely different. And so in a lineup of beers, I always like having, a wheat wine or a rye, wine or rye strong ale kind of tucked in there.
When you say it holds spices better, what do you mean? It showcases them more, or it holds on to that spice level for longer in the bottle?
I think the interplay on your palate is different.
Okay.
And again, I don't know if it's better or it's not worse, but it's definitely different. So I just like the way that certain baking spices fold into some more vinous wheat forward beers.
Okay. I wonder if it's because, wheat is sort of a lighter flavor than a barley. And so I wonder if you still get the protein structure out of it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't know. Letting it warm up. I get the peaches, and it's weird. It's not like peaches that you would necessarily maybe pick out right away, like peaches, like a peach sour ale or whatever. That's like right up front, because there's not that acidity really.
Yeah.
But it's like the flesh. It's like the flesh of the peach.
Yeah.
I kind of like, because you taste it, and it's there's a little spice that hits, and you get the wheat and the sort of malt in there, and then the peaches sort of ride that down. They're like the slide for everything else, just to kind of like continue on down the road. So it's a really nice executed beer, because you have that initial, this is a strong beer, and then the peach flesh flavor sort of, like I said, rides down to the finish, and everything sort of washes out on your palate. For as being a big of a beer it is, it's not cloying or overly sticky or anything like that.
Yeah.
How do you add the peaches? Are they whole peaches?
We're using the Oregon fruit puree on that one.
Okay, perfect. And where do you put that?
So with just a few points of gravity left, we'll throw it into the fermenter, so there's enough fermentation to eat the sugars, but not blow too much of the flavor off. And then post fermentation in the bright tank is where we soak cinnamon sticks and cracked nutmeg in some bourbon and throw that in there to sit on there for a bit too. But all of our barrel aged beers sit in the bourbon casks for 11 to 13 months.
Wow. How many points are you getting from the puree edition?
So that's kind of interesting too. There's a lot of batch to batch discrepancy on the puree. Not really between the boxes because they're all from the same batch, but like year to year. So we were trying to like dilute it with water, see where we're at, do the math. But then it just got to a point where this beer is always going to get ran through an alkalizer anyways. So let's not worry about that. And we'll just see where we're at post barrel aging.
Okay.
But I think looking back on the math, a lot of the times it would kind of have a neutral impact where the beer is so strong and then you're not necessarily putting, obviously the peaches have a lot of sugar, but there's also a lot of other mass in there that isn't just sugar. So it's almost like a nominal addition of sugar that is being added to the beer at that point.
Okay, I see. I wonder if it's also sort of a factor of the yeast already being stressed out from being in a high alcohol environment, that they're not going to go much higher anyways.
Yeah, it's a possibility.
Or not.
That's possible too. But I mean, we're putting like 300 to 400 pounds of puree into a 30 barrel batch of beer. So I think that too it's a lot of fruit, but compared to the volume of the beer already there, it isn't that much of the overall percentage.
Right. Okay. All right. Yeah, it smells good. I mean, warming up, definitely getting that nutmeg and that cinnamon combo. Even a little peach too. Yeah, that's a cool beer, man.
Thank you.
That's really neat. And when was this released? 2019?
Is that the 19 I sent you?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, we just released the 2021 like 2 days ago, so I wasn't able to meet the shipping deadline.
Yeah. Is this something you do every year with this specific?
Yeah. So the Bravery branded beers that comes out every year, right around the fall, late summer.
Okay. And you said that's your beer club.
Yeah.
How long have you been doing that?
We are going to be going into our 6th year, I believe, of that.
Okay.
Which
pretty wild.
Probably started that a little early because again, we weren't fully developed into our like 15 barrel brew house. But I like to bite off more than I can chew.
Sure.
So.
Why not? Otherwise, it's not fun, man.
Yeah, and it keeps the production team kind of like with their feet to the fire. It's like, okay, well, we have 10 beers that have to come out next year. So good luck.
Yeah. Hope you survive, brother. Later, I'm gonna make some more pizza.
Right.
Yeah, that's an interesting beer, man. The peaches work really well with the wheat. I think it's a good combo. Yeah, I like it, and I'm assuming other people are liking it too because you're you're still doing it.
Yeah, especially fresh. The spices are really, really bright, and I think the peach comes off a little bit more. But again, as it continues to age, we haven't pushed that beer much past 4 or 5 years. It hasn't fallen off for me yet. It's still continuing to kind of like round off a little bit, but it is fun to see where these beers are changing over the years and getting that empirical data with time. Like, okay, this one's good for up to 3 years. This one's good for up to 6 years, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, for sure. And I can definitely see how, fresher, everything would just be a little more focused.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's good. I like it. All right, Brian, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to crack open some more beers and we'll get back into it. So hang on, everybody. It's the session we're on with Bravery Brewery from Lancaster, California. We'll be right back. All right, thanks for hanging on, everybody. We're back with Brian from Bravery Brewing. We got 3 B's in that sentence. So, by the end of the show, I probably won't be able to say that. But, I'm going to try my best. Brian, during actually before the show, we were talking about your pizza oven and whatever, and you're going to be doing a cool sort of a charitable program in 2022. Can you tell me a little bit about that as well and linking up with your pizza kitchen?
Yeah. So it's something that we're going to kick off January of 2022, and we're referring to it as Pizza with a Purpose. And so in a given month, we're going to pick a charity or foundation that's near and dear to our hearts. And for that entire month, $1 from every pizza sold is going to go straight to that charity. The it means a lot to us on the back end because we built the pizza kitchen in response to COVID shutdowns and as a way to kind of foolproof our business moving forward. And we wouldn't have gotten through all of that without the support of our community. So it's like, all right, you guys took care of us when we needed it. Now that we're back on more sure ground, we want to give back as much as we can.
That's nice.
And yeah, it's also a really cool way too to highlight some of these organizations that most people might not be aware of, and you know, promote them and kind of bring awareness to the various causes that they're working for.
Yeah, that's really cool, man. And you know, it does help sort of distill the amount of charities down for people. Like, you know, every year my wife and I try to give a little bit to a charity or two here and there, but it's hard to figure out which ones. There's so many. There's a ton, which is good, but it's also bad that we need that much, you know, charitable giving these days. But it's hard to narrow it down. I mean, you pick any subject, any sort of focal point of, you know, underdeveloped, you know, preemies or, you know, kids or homeless children or whatever. There's a half a dozen charities on either, you know, anywhere you go. So
yeah,
that's nice, man. That's nice. Is the charity going to make a special pizza?
Maybe down the road.
Kind of fun, man.
I know. Let's
develop a pizza that's your pizza. That's the Helping Hand charity pizza or whatever. I don't know, and they get $2 for that.
I will think about that. I think that's a good idea.
It's pretty funny, man. I don't know. That's cool. Good job on you, man.
Thank
All
you.
right, what am I doing now for this next one? Lost Diner?
Sure. Yeah, I think kind of at this point, as long as we do the Isle of Scotch last, the other ones are kind of on the same tier.
That was the other thing where I'm pulling these beers. I'm like, what order is this shit going to go in? It's all going to be like, here it is. But anyway, tell me about the Lost Diner, man. I got 2 milkshakes on the cover, which I love a good milkshake.
Yeah, so we took a rather straightforward like imperial milk stout, sweet stout. It's about 11%, 10% ABV before it's going into the barrels. So then that again sits in bourbon barrels for the entire year. And then when we pull it out, we're dosing it with, I think the cacao nibs this year are from Uganda, and then a blend of Madagascar and Papua New Guinea vanilla beans.
Uganda, believe it, brother.
Uganda, believe it.
Yeah, that might be. Sorry if I offended anybody, but where are you getting your barrels from as that opens up and sort of warms up a little bit?
A couple of different barrel brokers. It's been really exciting to see how that industry is really taken off too, with so many breweries, you know, taking advantage now of all these fun casks. Kentucky Bourbon Barrel, Noah Steingraber has been a friend the last few years, and he always has his hands on some great quality bourbon barrels for us. Been going through Midwest barrels as well.
You're not reaching out to like specific distilleries or whatever. You're going through brokers.
No, yeah. So it's been all brokers right now. We've played with like some wine barrels from local wineries. That's always really cool too. I would love in the future to establish a relationship with some of the distilleries and get the barrels directly from them. But right now the brokerage has been working out for us.
That's cool. That's neat. Well, can you tell me the name of the distillery that this comes from, the barrel, or do you know, or does it even matter to you?
So with the beers that are getting dosed with the adjuncts, I don't care quite as much. It really comes down to like some brands in our experience have more like structural stability, less leaks, less evaporation.
Okay, quality of the barrel versus the brand of spirit that it comes from.
Correct. But then on the flip side, we have a series of beers coming out in a couple of weeks where it's an English old ale that we age in 3 different distinct bourbon barrels.
Shit.
So like 6 8-year Elijah Craig barrels, 6 10-year Eagle Rare, and then 6 13-year Old Forester.
Damn, dude. You're getting some quality spirit barrels out of that. That's good.
And I mean, that's thanks to the overall interest, you know, in this industry, where if only a few people were still barrel aging beers, then there wouldn't be this attention on the market, you know?
Yeah. I didn't even think that bourbon barrel age was such a big thing still.
I think there's enough mid to small size breweries such as us that are playing with it frequently enough that together we, keep a
Create a
large
little,
market.
yeah. Okay.
Because I'm probably doing what, like 1/1000th of what the brewery's doing.
Well, yeah. I forget about the brewery, honestly. We don't see them up here. It's not really big for us up here anymore. But I guess it's also like that, it's weird, man, being in this industry, especially on the side that I'm on, because it's like if I'm not into a specific style, I have no idea what's happening. Like I don't really seek out bourbon barrel aged beers anymore because I'm too delicate. And it's like I'll just, I'll have a lager or whatever, and like that's what I'm like working on. So the whole barrel age thing is like I don't know. You guys could be setting them on fire when you make that. I have no idea. But that's cool to see because it is a very interesting part of the brewing experience. It's like taking a piece of not produce, but an agricultural product like a barrel, which you don't really think about it, but it can be, depending on how it was handled before and how it was charred and what levels they're going to have, that can either make or break your beer or take it to a really awesome place or sort of break it down into like, maybe there's too much, vanillin or whatever. But it's a very interesting concept, and it's a whole thing. That wheat wine's already hitting me, dude. I'm sort of trailing off into my own brain. So I like this beer, man. It smells great. I had one sip of it so far, and it very much malt, like powdered malt, like you would make not a milkshake, but like a proper malt.
Yeah.
What are you putting in this beer? If you already told me, I apologize, but remind me.
So the base is Maris Otter, and then I think what's bringing that kind of like Ovaltine chocolate malt powder. There's a lot of pale chocolate malt in there.
Yes.
I feel like at high rates of use that gives that kind of like baker's chocolate, powdered chocolate, which is ultimately what we're trying to go for with that beer. The two malt shakes on the front of the label.
You're not putting like malted powder or anything like that, malted milk powder or anything. You're just
no, the only adjuncts in there are the lactose and then the cacao and the vanilla beans.
Wow, that's cool. So I mean, I think you're right. It must be the pale chocolate adding the different flavor at the high levels, like you're saying, because I've had those things in beers before, but they don't taste like this. And it's a smooth mouthfeel, but it is very dark milk chocolate, if that makes sense. It's not just like milk chocolate, which I fucking hate milk chocolate. I think it's disgusting. It's like one step below white chocolate, which is equally disgusting. It's like the worst thing you can ever eat. But like dark milk chocolate, for whatever reason, it still has those dark focused flavors, the sort of bitterness that you get from cacao, but it's very smooth.
Yeah.
The lactose is really doing its job and helping to carry things through. And it's a very pleasant mouthfeel. It's a very pleasant aftertaste as well on the palate. It's all over my mouth, like not just on my tongue, but like on the top of my mouth. It's weird, man. It's this very, this beer is definitely sitting around differently than a lot of other beers I've had that are similar. How long do you leave the cacao nibs in there for?
So those sit in there for around a week. Kind of just depends on what day of the production week they end up getting in there. So it's probably like 5 to 8 days on average.
You ever leave them in for longer than that?
I try not to. I would love to. I have a whole bucket list of brewing experiments that I want to conduct, but
I'm sure you do, man.
Yeah, just not enough time, and then not enough liquid to play with. But every year I think we're up to about 120, 130 active barrels filled with beer right now.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, so it's a big part of what we do, and we'll probably be closer to 200, active aging barrels within the next 2 years. So at that point, that's when I want to start doing more of these tests where it's like, okay, how long is too long with cacao conditioning, or how long is too long with, just being in the barrel in general. So we've been pushing some of our barrel aging up to like 30 months, and then just
Okay.
trying to catch it before it turns into vinegar.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I've done cacao before, and I'll leave it for like 4 months. On like
Oh, wow.
Yeah, or an oatmeal stout. Like my oatmeal stout, I'll leave it for 2, 3, 4 months sometimes. 4 months I think is a little too long because it pulls more of that tannin out of the nib.
Huh.
But for me, in my opinion, cacao nibs are like oak cubes, or you got to leave them in long for really to pull out more of that, the inside of the unit, whatever it is, right? The oak flavor from the oak cubes. I think it's the same thing with the cacao nibs. It's a different more rounded flavor. Not like there's no flavor in here. That's not what I'm saying. Don't be afraid of it. Don't fear the time. 2 months. I would go 2 months minimum.
Okay, I'll definitely try that next time. And then, I mean, because the other thing too, it's like, the amount of cacao as well. It's like if you're doing 10 pounds for a month or 20 pounds for 2 weeks.
That is true. That I've never done. But you need to hire a home brewer to just do this stuff on the side. Be like, look, bro, I'll pay you in beer. Here's 8 things I want you to brew and age them and come back to me in 6 months. And we'll see what's going on.
You're blowing my mind. I should have done this all along.
Yeah, I'm sure I'm really, redefining the space for everybody right now with these amazing things to talk about. But yeah, I mean, it is interesting because with the barrel age program, and especially with big beers, you really can sort of do whatever you want. Sky's sort of the limit.
Yeah.
And then so how do you it? And that's part of the reason I never really did it as a home brewer, and that's part of the reason I really don't do a lot of stuff probably in life. It's like, how much of the thing do you need to do the thing? I don't really like experimenting. I want to know if I'm going to put my time into it, I want to know that it's going to work. And that's my downfall as a businessman and just as a person in general, probably. Or it's like, why am I doing this? I don't fucking know if it's even going to pay off. But a beer, you have to do it. And especially if you have a palate like this, a palette of flavors and stuff to draw from, there's that effort that needs to be put in. It sounds like you're doing the right way. You're doing it very slowly and methodically and trying to actually learn, which I don't even know what that means. That's cool, man. Yeah, this is a very good beer.
Thank you.
What's your favorite beer of these to drink, of your bourbon barrel aged beers?
I am very happy with this current batch at the Lost Diner. Because this was us starting to play with doing like multiple vanilla beans, which I think that Madagascar on its own is great, but just like hops, the synergy between different types of vanilla beans, the sum is always greater than the parts, is what I'm finding. So yeah, and then we're always tweaking. So when you're doing a vertical of our beers, they're gonna be 90% similar, minus the impact of aging. But we have reverse osmosis water here. So we're building our water profiles up from scratch. And so we're always kind of tweaking that year by year. And then trying to find like the sweet spot of like, how strong do we want the base beer to be going into the barrels? Typically those numbers only go up. They don't really go down.
Weird.
Yeah. These beers just keep getting stronger, I think, year by year. But yeah, it's a lot of fun to play. And I'm going to probably reach out to the homebrew community and see if I can hire them to do some experiments.
Oh, you were serious? Yeah, man. I think
I like that idea. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, cool. I thought you were like, yeah, no shit, dude. Of course that we, but I can't do it or whatever. But
that was a genuine mind explosion.
Oh, okay, cool. Well then, hey, I feel good about it. I of course, anything that comes out of that development program, I get 10% off the top. That's just for the idea.
That's fair.
You know how many people I've told that to, and they go, "Yep, okay," and I haven't got a single penny, dude.
Man,
I'm just kidding. Yeah, I think that'd be cool. And what homebrewer wouldn't be stoked as shit to do something like that?
Yeah, to actually play a role in their local brewery like that.
Yeah,
that'd be really cool.
Do a thing. Why not? Okay, let's do one more. Let's take a break. We're gonna come back and I don't know, do all sorts of weird shit. Okay, so we're gonna save the Isla. So we're gonna go with the Shroud Vanilla Bourbon Barrel Aged 2001 vintage. Tell me a little bit about the Shroud, please.
So that's kind of
Cool.
our
I like that little hog's head.
yeah.
Looks really nice.
It's like our second flagship. It's our flagship strong beer. It is the beer that has won more awards for us than any other beer. I think the non-vanilla, the bourbon barrel aged Shroud, has taken 2 golds at the San Diego International, and the base Shroud has a silver medal at GABF. So just a base beer that I'm really fond of, really happy with what it's doing. Every year we age it in a variety of different casks. So this one was bourbon barrel aged for a full year and then hit exclusively with Madagascar vanilla beans. So yeah, just a really straightforward kind of ode to those bourbon barrel aged beers that caught my attention a decade plus ago.
Excellent. Very cool. When you get a barrel, do you already know what you're going to do with it? Or do you get the barrel and you smell it and you examine it and you go, well, this would be good in, like, for example, the Shroud with, let's just hit it with just vanilla beans and see. Like, where does that process come in the decision making?
So the initial procurement of the barrels is something that it's like, okay, the beer's done fermenting, we've cold crashed it. Now I'm going to order the barrels. So it gets that conditioning time for however many, 1-2 weeks that it takes for the barrels to arrive. Which to anyone else out there trying to barrel age beers, because I've seen people that are just putting like room temp, non-crashed beer into a barrel. You're kind of setting yourself up for failure because there's going to be so much dead yeast and unwanted particulates making its way into the barrel. Sometimes if the production allows for it, we'll clarify it with biofine as well, just to put really clear beer into those barrels.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
But we typically know that we're going to age our beers for at least 9-10 months. So at that 9-10 month marker, that's when we're going to start pulling samples to see what's going on. We end up having a dump rate of like 1 out of 12.
1 out of 12 barrels?
Yes.
Okay.
Which I'm happy with because we don't rinse them. We don't steam them. The barrels show up. We'll do a little water test on both heads of the barrel to make sure that it's holding water on the head.
Okay.
Because if it can't keep water on the head, it's not going to keep beer inside.
Nope.
But after about 2 days of doing that, then purge them with CO2 and fill the barrels. But it's not until after like 9-10 months of aging that we're going to get an idea of where it's going. And it's not one of the beers that I sent you, but we have an Imperial Brown Ale that we age in bourbon barrels. And the first time we did it, it just was like full amaretto, like this sweet almond marzipan kind of thing was coming out of it. And so we ended up dosing that with almonds and cherries. And that's something that we would have never thought of doing until the barrel kind of like showed what it wanted to do.
Nice. Okay. And then at what point do you leave all that stuff in the barrel? Like you said, the almonds and the cherries. Are you putting that in the barrel or is it like in a tank afterwards? How do you
yes.
place ingredients?
So far, nothing goes into the actual barrel. We're racking everything out. If everything like meets the blend, or sometimes we'll like, some of these barrels are more coconut or vanilla forward. We'll treat that over here. These ones are more like neutral. So we'll just have them be straight up. But either way, yeah, it all gets racked into a bright tank. And then that's when we'll put the adjuncts or whatever we're going to use into the tank as well.
Got it. Okay. You need to do, and I say need, is find a distillery and give these barrels to. Like throw a gin in there or, tequila, not tequila, but agave spirit or whatever, depending on whatever. That'd be cool. And then you can get the barrel back.
That would be cool. Yeah.
You have distilleries out there? I mean, I don't even really, assuming it's,
Not up here. I know there's a couple in LA proper, and then there's some out towards like Santa Barbara and whatnot. But yeah, I'm walking away with a lot of homework assignments tonight.
Yeah, maybe only if all of my ideas were as well accepted. Brian, I feel like you should be on every show just to tell me that I'm smart. It's funny, man. Listening to this beer, I get a lot of. Now, smelling the beer, it takes me back to my very first job. This is a stupid story, but I don't really give a shit anymore. at Thrifty Ice Cream, which is now CVS. Thrifty's is now CVS. And I was working the ice cream counter, and like walking into that store by the ice cream counter, I didn't really realize it until now. It's that vanilla essence that's sort of just in the air from, you know, a lot of the ice cream. That's what I get out of that. And then like the ice cream freezer, it's that same, like, I don't know, it's cool having a smell that can just sort of take you back to when you were like 17.
Yeah.
Non-beer related, you know what I mean? So it's really cool. And then tasting it sort of has that same, just right back there. It's really nice.
I love that so much about the olfactory sense and just how it's connected to our memory and our emotions. It's magic. I mean, it sounds kind of silly to call it that, but it is.
Yeah, it's cool. And it's, I don't know, man. Sometimes I think that we don't really understand that as much when we're talking about beer. When me personally, when I'm berating a beer or even just breaking it down. I mean, sometimes if you sort of pull something apart to really examine it, you sort of lose some of that magic, and that I think that's okay. You can call it magic because it sort of is what our forefathers would probably call magic or whatever. This beer is time traveling me. It's transporting my brain back in the whatever. This is a very good beer, man. You know, just like all the others, it's a very strong malt character, but a lot of dark chocolate, like bitter chocolate flavors. The vanilla's there, but it's not like overly sweet vanilla or very aggressive vanilla. It's just the right amount. I wouldn't want any more. There's no more vanilla would go in here. The barrel, I think, is there a little bit, but I think in your barrel beers, I think what you're doing is you're putting the beer first, and I appreciate that, because sometimes you get barrel beers and it's like, oh, this was in a barrel. It wasn't. It's like someone took sandpaper on your tongue first. And these are not like that. This is a beer first. And I think that's hard to do. And I think that really attests to your timing, when to pull it out.
Yeah.
What do you do with the beers or with the barrels when you're done? How many times do you use these barrels?
So to date, all of our barrel aged beers are one and done.
Okay.
So they turn into planters or decoration behind me.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So I've had a lot of beers that were twice, used barrels, and I think, in lighter beers too, like I think Firestone Walker is doing their like Oktoberfest beer in a oak barrel or something like that. It's really nice, but that's not what we're doing. Those aren't the beers that we're barrel aging. So again, because we're making the year-long commitment to these beers, I would hate to, refill a cask and then not be happy with the result. So a lot of what we're doing here too is just like, if it ain't broke, don't fix it kind of a thing. While trying to a lot in the future, little, like I said, experiments or so, like probably down the road, we'll see what happens when we do a second use barrel. But just for right now, production timelines are so tight and we know what we're going to get with what we're currently doing, kind of a thing.
Yeah. Got it. As this beer's warming up, I get like a marshmallow flavor to it, but not in, sometimes I'll use that as a like a sort of an off flavor descriptor. And that's not what I mean. It's like a light marshmallow flavor, if that makes any sense. And I think that's just a function of the beer design and how it works with the barrel. Yeah, it's a really interesting beer. I like this a lot. Yeah, good job, man. I dig it.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to take our last break here, Brian. We're going to come right back. We're going to drink the last beer, the Smoky Guy, as I'll call it, and learn a little bit more about what's going on there, and then we'll let you split. So cool. Hang tight. All right, everybody, it's the session. We'll be right back with Brian from Bravery Brewing. See, I said I'm still doing it. I'm saying it good. All right, what's going on, everyone? It's the session. We are here with Brian still. He's still hanging around for some reason. From Bravery Brewing down in Lancaster, California, home of the great Push Eject.
Oh yeah, Charlie.
Yeah, good dude. All right, I'm cracking this last one here. But you know, I gotta ask, do you do a pale ale at all? Do you
Yes, we
do
do.
like normal beers?
So it's a little wild in our tap room. We'll have up to 36 beers on tap
Wow.
because at any given point we'll have about 12 barrel aged beers, and then
12 barrel. Okay, you are. I think you need to step away from the brew house, and yeah, that is wow.
I spent way too much time hanging out at the brewery in Placentia. It tainted me.
Yeah, I think so. Sounds like it.
But no, I mean it. Like you were talking with the transplants guys, like it is miserably cold out here for several months out of the year, which is just prime, in my opinion, barrel aged drinking weather. But no, we have a Kolsch year round. We have a Hefeweizen year round. Pale ales, IPAs.
Okay.
A lot of traditional style beers that do really well for us in the tap room and in the surrounding area. But for me, from a really selfish standpoint, I both love drinking barrel aged beers, and then I love the process of making them, because
Yeah.
brewing is such rigid science. And then it's like, all right, I have this, product that I've made very close to the recipe, and then now I'm going to throw it into this organic vessel that's going to do whatever it's going to do.
Yeah, right. And I have no idea.
Yeah, and I hope it's great, but maybe it's not. So
Yeah. Well, of course you like drinking barrel beers. You have a beard and wearing a flannel.
yeah, I'm checking a lot of boxes.
Yeah, those are really two key points that you got. No, I'm just teasing. That's good. And I last time I was not last time I was in Lancaster, but a few years ago went to Bravery. And you guys had a lot of beers on. I was very impressed with just the overall number and the quality of the beer. So, but I don't remember as many barrel aged beers as that. Is that something you've just been ramping up over time?
It's probably so. Were you there with Justin at the same time?
No, I was not. I was there, I think, when Roger was there, whenever that was.
Okay.
Years. It was a long time ago.
Yeah, there was one day several years back, and Justin and some other Brewing Network guys came in, but I can't remember who all was there.
Yeah, I can't remember. Probably. I mean, it just seems like every other thing I've ever done, where it's like we're just walking into a warehouse and then we got a beer. No, I don't think I was.
Yeah, because we probably, when you were last in here, we hadn't expanded to our. We took over an adjacent warehouse, and that's our production space now.
Oh yeah, definitely not. No, that looks cool. I'm looking at behind you. Have looks like an open air dining area.
Yeah, we have a really big back patio that looked like a freeway overpass for a long time with all the tents out here because everyone wasn't allowed to come into the building.
Okay.
Yeah, no. So we were using our one walk-in cooler in the tasting room as our everything cold room, and then when we got the production brewery, we were able to wrap more taps around the other side. So we went from 14 taps to 34 plus 2 beer engines.
Wow. Yeah, I definitely missed all of that. And how many fermenters do you have? You said you have a 30 barrel brew house?
15 barrel brew house.
Okay.
And we have 5 30 barrel fermenters and 2 60 barrel tanks.
Wow.
So we're keeping busy. It's been good and bad the last 2 years in a lot of ways.
What are your plans for the future?
So I think we're finally, because pre-COVID we had about 12 employees, and then now we have 30, largely due to the pizza kitchen, because we have really broad hours. We're 11 a.m. to 10 p.m. every day. A second location, I think, is definitely the obvious next move in the next year or two. I love what Figueroa Mountain has been doing, where they kind of leapfrog every 45 miles away from their headquarters. So you're you're retaining your brand recognition. You're not some new player just coming into a new market. So that, and then, yeah, again, just continuing to explore and refine. And only in the last couple of years have we been seriously submitting beers to brewing competitions. And again, like the stronger beers have been doing really good for us. So that's very validating, but also kind of keeps you like on a good track, I think. Like, all right, we don't really have to play with that beer too much more. You know, like let's move on to the next one that we think we have to kind of tweak to get where it needs to be.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. All right. Well, I cracked this last one open. Islay Scotch barrel aged Shroud.
This one lets you know that it was in a barrel.
Yeah, it's on my lap basically. I'm holding it and I can smell the peat.
Yeah, the tire fire.
Yeah. Well, I love peated Scotch. I think it tastes. It smells weird. It's like that iodine-y fresh Band-Aid, sort of thing. But it with the malt in the background, it works. Normally you wouldn't want to be smelling iodine, but I don't get a lot of that. Out of here, I get like that classic like Islay. It's not really heavy. It's very light. Almost like seaside. With a little bit of the light malt coming through. How long, when you get some Islay Scotch barrels, how long do you consider leaving the beer in first versus your reality? And I know that might not make sense, but if I got Islay Scotch barrels, I'd be like, oh shit, I would think like 6 months. I don't want it to get too peaty and too, over gonzoed here. Was there a fear that you were going to just totally ruin it with these barrels?
Yeah. So this is only the second time we've aged this beer or any beer in a Islay Scotch barrel. And it was actually a Lafroig barrel to be specific.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
This one was?
Yeah. That was really cool too, seeing like the white painted head with the Lafroig stencil on the barrel when they showed up.
That's cool, man.
But so 3 years ago, I guess, when we were putting a beer into a Lafroig barrel for the first time, we let it go the full year because our thought was we'll either back blend it if it's too much or keep it as is. Mm-hmm. And this is pretty peaty and pretty like noticeable, but last year's batch was even more intense. And so I was there with my brew team and we're sampling I think it was about 6 Lafroig barrels that we filled, and they all hated it. They're like, we have to back blend this. This is insane. I was like, okay, but just to clear the air, like, do any of you actually like Islay Scotch? And they're like, no, we hate it. And I was like, okay, so normally this is very democratic, but I'm going to have to veto that decision. And
yeah, that's like saying, oh man, this Russian Imperial Stout, I hate it. We got to dump it. I don't like the style, but actually all your staff sounds like they work, they have Untapped accounts where they just go, no, 2 stars out of 5. I don't like the style at all.
Oh, that's the worst. Yeah. So I feel like with certain things, it's a love it or hate it. I think Islay Scotch is absolutely one of those.
Oh,
so
yeah, dude. Yes. 100%. It's very polarizing.
Yeah. So this was just a decision. It's like, we're not going to make as much of this specific variant as our others. This is for the Islay Scotch lover.
Whoever you are.
Yeah. And so if anyone reaches into our bottle cooler and we see them grabbing a blue wax bottle, it's like, please offer them a sample first before you sell them that bottle. Because if they don't know what they're getting themselves into, they're going to be upset.
Okay. So what I would do is that's a good way to get a free taste of beer. See, just like you were trying to do a more beer years ago, which is still hilarious, man. And that's one of the reasons, not one of the reasons, but we at More Beer in Concord, we used to just have, homebrew on tap all the time, brew a kit or brew a whatever. And you put the extra on tap and people come in, you drink and you offer them beer or whatever. But then people, and I think it was mostly the pipe fitter union training hall that was around the corner. It would come in, we'd have guys in like suit and ties like come in just during lunchtime, and they would go right to the back where the cooler was, right to the back of the walk-in, and pour a pint and literally chug it, and then they would walk out.
Oh man.
And so we eventually had to like stop putting that on there, because it would just be like, you're not, I mean, kudos. Good job.
That's so brazen to do that.
Just a pound, like just some IPA, just wow, and then that's it. See you later, man. Yeah. I don't know. That is very funny though. Leave it up to college kids to figure out how to get free beer.
Yeah, I mean that was pre-Reddit, pre-modern internet.
Internet 1.0. Wow, this is an amazing beer because the Islay Scotch really comes through more than I would expect. And I know what you mean. It's a beer for Scotch lovers, for Islay lovers specifically. But it's not overpowering in any way, but it is sort of almost elevated above the beer.
Yeah.
Which normally I would shit all over. But I think it works with that particular style, with this particular style of a Scotch. Because it's, sort of light in general, like the Scotch flavor of a, like a, Scotch is sort of, light, it's lighter malt. It's sort of a sweeter malt thing, but that Islay is really overpowering in the Scotch, and that's why it's so polarizing. But you really get a whole lot of, what am I trying to say? It's almost like you took the Islay portion of the Scotch and transplanted it into the beer, and I think that makes it okay, because just like in an Islay Scotch, you have the Islay, the aromas, and all that kind of differentiators. And then you have the Scotch. Well, in here you have all those aromas, and then you have the beer.
Yeah.
So it's almost like you replace the head of that Scotch flavor wheel, and then put it on top and transplant it on top of a beer.
That's interesting.
I kind of like it. I mean, I think that's really neat. It's neat.
I think
sort of like evolved like that.
Yeah, and so with this beer too, we didn't change the base Russian Imperial Stout going in. So what I feel like because not a whole lot of people are using Islay Scotch barrels to age beer in the first place, but when they are, I feel like almost all of them are adding peated malt to the base beer. And I think that on paper that makes sense, but then in execution, it's just too much peat, and you don't have any like pause away from just peat. But then also too, maybe because smoke is in the phenol family, and I'm wondering if because it has a tendency to be so volatile that's why you're just being hit with like that over the top kind of peat on the top, because it's a phenolic that's wafting off the beer right up into your olfactory.
Yeah, I wouldn't want more peat than this.
Same.
I wouldn't want it. I like the base beer the way it is, because it's sweet. It's that dark, almost bitter chocolate. It's cocoa flavors. To me, that cleans up those smoky phenols in the head. Yeah.
I love this particular beer with like salted caramel fudge and like hard cheeses. It's such a fun like charcuterie beer.
Yeah. That's a really fascinating combination. What is the percentage-wise? Well, not percentage-wise. How do people like this beer? Are you getting a demand for this beer? That's what I'm trying to ask. Because it's a hard pill to swallow sometimes.
So if I didn't like this beer, we would not be making this beer.
Okay.
There's a really small group of people that really enjoy this, and I think a lot of the bottles that get purchased are then gifted to Scotch drinkers, I feel like, is what I'm seeing.
Yeah.
Because again, we'll have that quick exchange like, hey, do you like Islay Scotch before you buy this bottle? And they're like, oh no, I hate it, but my brother or my dad or whoever really enjoys Ardbeg, Lafroig, whatever, so I'm going to give this to him.
That's cool. I can see that. I guess a better question would be, have you had any angry responses to the beer where they pick it up and they go, this is not what I expected? I could see that.
Yeah, I mean, a little bit. It'll sneak its way into a taster flight here and there, and then it's the one glass that just has a small sip taken from it, and every other glass is empty. But again, I mean, that's
fair enough, man.
Yeah, we're running a business at the end of the day, but also at the same time, it's like I'm doing this out of a passion that I've had for a very long time. And if I don't get to sprinkle in some stuff that's purely just out of what I subjectively enjoy, then like, what are we doing?
Yeah, exactly. Well, Brian, I think we'll let you go, man. I really appreciate the time and the beers. They're all tasting really good, man. Next time, send me a lager, would you? For God's sakes.
Okay. Yeah. You won't get any more barrel aged beers, at least not next time. But
no, it was good, man. It was interesting because immediately I go like, oh shit, I don't know what to talk. Like it's gonna be hard, but it wasn't hard at all because it's they're all very different, even though they're close to the same style, I guess, except for the wheat wine. But it's just the barrel talk and like how we're talking about adding stuff to it and how long and where do we get them and how do we keep them or whatever. It was all really interesting and stuff that we don't normally talk about on the show. Because we're getting no offense, we're getting a more diverse crowd of things, but I like the focus and I'm glad that it's a passion of yours, and I think that really comes through. You have 10 or 12 or 15 or 100, I forget how many you said. You're crushing the barrels, man, and I think they're all working out. They're all tasting great, so I think that you have a really good idea on how long to leave them in and the flavors they're providing and how to work best with the beer that you're brewing, which is hard to do. I mean, that's all really tough to do with these kind of things. So good job. Yeah.
Well, thank you. And again, I have listened to so much like Brew Strong and the other shows on the Brewing Network as a home brewer, and then even as a commercial brewer. So keep doing what you guys are doing. Such an honor to be a part in any small way.
Well, it should feel that way. Where can people find out more about Bravery Brewing?
braverybrewing.com. We're actually launching a totally revamped website by the end of the year, and then
great.
at Bravery Brewing on all social media platforms.
Excellent. All right, Brian, thanks a lot, man. I appreciate it.
Cool. Thank you.
All right, everybody. Thanks a lot for tuning in. Appreciate that. Thank you to our sponsor, More Beer. You can go to morebeer.com and learn about absolutely everything you need to make great beer at home. Also coffee roasting, mead making, wine making, all kind of fun stuff. So check them out, morebeer.com. They support this show and basically most of the crap we do on the Brewing Network. So if you're not in the market for homebrewing supplies yet, or you haven't brewed another batch in a while or whatever, send them an email and just thank them at least for being a part of the show and keeping the show alive. We'd appreciate it. All right, everyone. Thanks a lot. Stay safe. And till next time, we'll see you later.